At age 26 and playing in his first year with the Miami Heat, LeBron James was already looked at as the best player in the NBA. And throughout the 2011 season, it seemed like it was inevitable for Miami to win the championship. But everything for the Heat fell apart in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks, and LeBron James had by far his worst individual playoff series. In this video, we're going to both look at how exactly the Mavs were able to slow him down and what limitations LeBron had in his game at the time. Now, before we dive into that series, I first want to briefly go over what made LeBron so good at this point of his career. The obvious thing that stands out is his play in transition. Out in the open floor, LeBron was one of the most powerful forces in NBA history, both having the speed to turn on the jets and play at high speeds, plus the strength to bulldoze through contact. And a lot of people forget how fast this version of LeBron was. When it came to filling lanes and running off the ball, he could get from one end of the court to the other as fast as anybody across the league. And then off the dribble, if James got the defense backpedaling or just slightly out of position, it was pretty much impossible to stop him from creating a scoring angle. There's nothing super advanced he's going to do here off the dribble. He's just going to attack hard to his right, to then lower that shoulder and get the defense to open up their stance. And then on top of those physical tools, LeBron was also comfortable picking up into finishes going both right and left. And the touch he had around the basket was pretty ridiculous. Now, all those tools from LeBron's speed, strength, and touch also carried over to his attacking game in the half court. But when going back and looking at these clips, the biggest thing that stood out to me was his quickness. Off the dribble, James never had a super creative handle, but he could get blow-bys by just taking these north to south angles. And once he had the defense on his hip, it was pretty much impossible to move him off his driving line. LeBron's going to get the switch here against KG, and watch him transfer the ball between, skip his feet up, building momentum to push himself downhill. We'll see him hit the same move here, where he again brings it through, floats those feet up, to then explode to the basket.
Get after him, and LeBron takes the challenge.
And personally, my favorite part about this version of LeBron was how dynamic and shifty he was in the paint, where he could hit these sharp changes of direction to navigate through traffic, or he could lift up and maneuver around length in the air. Watch him here turn the corner off this ball screen, and he has Garnett sitting in the paint waiting for him. But look how James is going to lift up to then bring the ball down and find the scoop layup on the other side of the rim. The footwork on this move is nasty, where James again explodes off the ball screen to his right, and he's going to hit an inverted Euro by pounding the ball and planting his left foot, to then push back to his right and elevate for a finish. Now, when it comes to LeBron scoring outside the paint, this was a pretty streaky part of his game, and this did come back to bite him against Dallas. But despite that, he could heat up if you gave him too many clean looks. And he did have a variety of ways to get these jumpers off. Because the defense was so worried about that downhill driving, it was pretty easy for him to create space while facing up, or working off different screening actions. And from behind the line, most teams were willing to leave him open for spot-up threes. And while his numbers this year weren't great, he was still a more than capable shot maker. So even at just 26 years old, this version of LeBron was still an established superstar. He was coming off back-to-back MVP seasons, he had lots of playoff experience, plus like we went over, he had elements in his game that were just overwhelming for the defense. So what exactly went wrong against Dallas? Now, the first thing Dallas did was send multiple bodies at James. Throughout the finals, LeBron pretty much never had the opportunity to play one-on-one. Whether he was playing in the post, out on the perimeter, or handling the ball in transition, Dallas made it a point to both crowd the paint with bodies and send multiple defenders at the ball. LeBron on this play is looking to push the ball in early offense, but as he attacks below the arc, look how the Mavs literally have all 5 defenders collapse down towards the paint, and there's just no room for him to score or create any kind of advantage. And then even if the Mavs didn't initially double LeBron off the catch, they always had aggressive shifts ready once he put his head down looking to charge towards the basket. He initially has a good one-on-one matchup on the deep wing, but as he rips towards the middle, look how the Mavs send 3 defenders across the paint. Another important detail to the Mavs defense was their full court pressure. Like we went over, LeBron with the ball really thrived off of space and momentum. But with a defender in his face the entire way up the court, it made it really difficult for him to pick up momentum and charge towards the basket. And this took away his ability to put pressure on the rim in early offense. Now it's also important to note that this packed-in style of defense really exposed the lack of shooting around Miami's stars. They did have good shooters on paper like Mario Chalmers, Mike Miller, and James Jones, but defensively you can't afford to have 2 or 3 of those guys on the court at the same time. And this led to the Heat having a bunch of clunky half-court possessions. LeBron here is going to get this quick brush screen from Wade in early offense. But look how the Mavs again sit in the lane, ignoring both Wade and Bosh at the top of the key. And when Dwayne gets this pass, he's not looking to set his feet and shoot, but instead put the ball down and attack the basket. So the combination of Dallas pressuring the ball and packing the paint also carried over to their defense out of pick and roll. Again, when James looked to turn the corner, he was always met with 2 or 3 defenders in the lane. Plus, the Mavs bigs were throwing out these hard hedges on ball screens, which pushed LeBron's momentum back and gave the Mavs defense more time to load up the paint. Look how LeBron again gets pushed back by this ball screen. And this both gives Shawn Marion more time to work around the screen and get back in front, as well as give Dallas more time to build up this wall. Now with the ball, LeBron often made the right read by finding the roller with these tight pocket passes, but this is where I think Dallas deserves a lot of credit for being in sync with their rotations. The Heat on this play are going to set this screen with an empty corner, giving Bosh all the space to roll into. But as he catches, look how Dirk on the weak side is ready to rotate over, while the rest of the defense shifts down.
Bosh has it. It's inside, blocked from behind.
Now despite the Mavs being honed in off the ball, James was still able to pick them apart in spots throughout the series. First, the Heat like to initiate a big chunk of their offense with LeBron in the post. And again, because the Mavs were sending heavy help from the weak side, LeBron was able to put them in rotation with simple kickout and swing passes. And from a spacing standpoint, the Heat often had one of their shooters spotting up in the opposite corner, where they could then capitalize on those breakdowns. The Heat could have used more possessions like this, where both Chalmers and Miller are spotting up on the weak side, and as soon as Dallas puts 2 on the ball, it turns into an automatic open 3.
Miller, he knocks one down.
Another play Miami found a lot of success with was using these cross screens for Wade in the paint, where he could either work around for a catch and finish, or LeBron could capitalize on breakdowns and set up more easy offense. And Miami's off-ball movement also played a big factor while James was handling the ball out on the perimeter. Like we went over, Dallas was constantly blitzing and hard hedging all of his pick and roll actions, but this then opened up the paint for all kinds of cuts and rolls. We'll see the Mavs again here put 2 on the ball, but notice how Wade in the corner is going to cut behind the defense and parachute up to the rim. So while LeBron was still able to generate some offense with his passing, it still wasn't enough to make up for his massive drop in scoring. And in essence, Dallas's game plan was to force guys like Bosh, Miller, and Haslam to be their primary scorers and decision makers, which obviously isn't ideal for an NBA Finals series. Now with LeBron scoring, I actually think he did his best work off the ball, by either screening and rolling, or working off different cross screens and pin downs in the paint. Plus he was able to break loose in transition to get some buckets and fouls. But in the half court, I think James did his best work by screening and moving off the ball. But the issue for Miami is that LeBron was by far their best playmaker. So if you move them off the ball, you're then losing that ability to force coverages and create breakdowns. Wade for sure had a ton of scoring juice off the dribble, but he was simply never the caliber of passer that LeBron was. And the Heat's offense throughout this season always ran best with the ball in LeBron's hands. But at age 26, the Mavs defense did expose some real holes in his game. First, James at this point of his career was not a reliable outside shooter, making exactly 33% of his threes in the regular season, while also shooting below 35% in the mid-range throughout the playoffs. There was no doubt at the time that LeBron was a talented shot maker, but the consistency wasn't there yet. And everything from the heavy gap and weak side defense, to the hard hedges out of pick and roll was all designed to funnel LeBron into off the dribble jumpers, and the Mavs were comfortable letting him take these in high volume. And as the series went on, it was pretty clear that James started to lose his confidence by either passing up open pull-ups out of pick and roll or refusing to take spot-up threes with a ton of breathing room. And as a Heat fan, it was pretty jarring to see LeBron this unsure of himself. So because James was taking less and less jumpers as the series went on, this led to him forcing drives into traffic. And granted, because of how talented he was, this did work for him in spots. But again, the Mavs had the paint loaded up with bodies and size. And it doesn't really matter how gifted or athletic any one player is. If you're forcing up looks like this in traffic, the result typically is going to be very positive. And many of the looks LeBron got were rushed, awkward, and pushed out finishes. So the combination of LeBron not having the confidence in his outside shooting and the Mavs eating up all his downhill drives led to him playing pretty passive down the stretch. It's one thing for a great player to lose emptying the clip, but it felt like James was avoiding the moment when things got tight. And there were too many possessions where he was looking to get rid of the ball, as opposed to being aggressive and finding a way to make plays. And it wasn't like he was making the right read to set up his teammates. Take this play for example. LeBron's going to catch on this backdoor cut, but instead of powering up for a finish, he looks to pass the ball out, leading to a turnover.
Cutting to the basket. Bosh not expecting.
But when looking at LeBron's career now from a bird's eye view, I think this was a good learning experience for him. And if you enjoyed this video, you're probably going to like the next one, where we go over all the adjustments that LeBron made to his game in the following year.